my name is Melissa Partin, and I am a biology teacher at Randolph Early College High School. So there's a great advantage in being able to tag the questions using standards. It's one thing to develop an assessment and just have some great questions that we've developed and that can quickly assess whether students got the information that we taught in the classroom. But when it's tagged with standards, we now have data that we can actually point to that quantitatively assess whether students have gotten specific clarifying objectives within specific goals. And so now we've got reports that we can actually look at, and we can actually say that this student got this clarifying objective or that clarifying objective, but they missed this one. So one way that I'm able to use Schoolnet is I implement standards-based instruction and standards-based grading in the classroom. One way that Schoolnet tools helps me is I'm able to use the Student Performance Standards Mastery report, an area of Schoolnet, so that when my students are in and we are assessing, I can identify what their proficiency levels are within the standards. And so in my report that I create, or the tracking form that I have, that I track students with, I identify student proficiency by levels 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And so on the assessments in Schoolnet, when I look at the Student Performance Standards Mastery report, I can identify that anywhere from a 90 to 100 would be a level 5, anywhere from an 80 to an 89 would be a 4, or a 70 to a 79 would be a 3. And from there, I can track them on the form and quickly get a quick illustration of how proficient the class is as a whole, or trends within students on whether or not they're reaching proficiency, they're growing, or they need intervention and remediation. So in addition to using the Student Performance Standards Mastery, I'm going to use the Student Performance Student List. And so what that gives me is a quick snapshot of how the class did as a whole on the assessment. I'm able to gauge very quickly, did the class as a whole, were they proficient on those standards, or as a class do we need to go back into some of that content and remediate. The item analysis report is also going to break down that assessment and show me, did students miss certain questions more frequently than others as a whole group. And so what that will allow us to do is I can see, was the question missed because we didn't completely cover a misconception? Do we need to readdress that misconception? Was it because perhaps the Tier 2 vocabulary within that question tripped the students up, and do we need to do some vocabulary instruction for those words? And so those reports are able me to make those decisions very quickly. With Schoolnet, what it allows for the students to be able to see is after they've taken that assessment, after those standards-based lessons have been given, they can then quickly identify whether they've hit proficiency or maybe grown in their proficiency on those standards. Also, in remediation, once the students have taken the assessment, they're able to go back into the assessment, they're able to see what they placed as their answer and start identifying why they got it incorrect. So students are expected to do a test analysis after their assessment, and they're expected to do test corrections. In addition, being able to be a part of the team that developed the district midterm in biology, it was helpful to be able to share the assessment through Schoolnet, because that meant that all biology teachers within the district were able to give their students the same benchmark. And what that allows is we can identify maybe what teachers in certain schools are teaching certain goals a little bit better. Their students are gaining that information a little bit better than others. It's not used for competition, but instead it can be used for conversation. The wonderful thing about Schoolnet is that it is a bank that allows us to build assessments, but more importantly, What we've learned is that in order for us to be able to truly understand and know what our students know, we've got to be able to have quick and timely feedback with data that supports that information. So that's where Schoolnet excels. That's where I use it as a tool mostly. So finally, for those of you that maybe are not using Schoolnet for more than just maybe your district midterm that you're made to do, maybe I would challenge you to take one of your great assessments, maybe that's multiple choice, and that you know is a good assessment. And I would challenge you to go into Schoolnet and build an assessment using your test that you've already created. And go ahead and tag those standards that are correlated with the questions. And I challenge you to give that assessment to your students and use those reports and see how it drives the instruction of your remediation or future lessons.